once again to celebrate this event in this wonderful place with Rain 2. Thanks to Bernard Frey and Ricardo Bocanegra for participating in this informative talk about the Brexit, where they will clarify topics of your interest. And thanks to all of you for your attendance. Please leave us your contacts to inform you of upcoming events and talks and any other matter regarding with the Brexit in the future and the new law after the end of the year. And now I will give the floor to Ricardo Bocanegra. Okay.
Good morning. Thank you, Rene and the Town Hall for the organization of this event. I hope it will be interesting for everybody because we are just now in the last 2 months before the transition period ends. It's important just to do everything correct now that we are still in time. There are many citizens, many British citizens interested to know what to do before the end of the transition period so that to avoid the future paperwork which will be demanded as non-communitarian citizens. The situation will change. The situation will change next year because British citizens will be considered as non-communitarian citizens and the general law for foreigners will be applicable to them, to you. So it's important to move yourself before the end of the year. In fact, regulations have been approved to establish a transition period during which British residents in Spain will be able to obtain a foreign citizen identity card without any problem. Now it will be very easy. The transition period would expire, as I'm sure you know, on 31st December 2020, unless the expiry date is extended, which nobody knows sure yet. In fact, it has been adopted measures aimed at preserving the interests and rights of British citizens who established their residence in Spain before the end of the transition period. In connection with the period of stay, from the moment the United Kingdom leaves the European Union, British people will be considered citizens of a third state for the purpose of staying in Spain and in the rest of Schengen countries. This means they will not be able to stay in the Schengen area for more than 90 days every 6 months. Not more than 90 days every 6 months. In connection with the residence permit, if UK nationals wish to stay in Spain for more than 90 days, or simply wish to avoid the need to measure their time in Spain, you must apply for a residence permit. There are 3 different cases in principle. One case is British citizens holding a registration certificate as a permanent European Union resident, certificado de registro de ciudadano de la Unión Europea permanente, the green paper, the green card. They may obtain the foreign citizen identity card for long-term residence by submitting an application at the national police station corresponding to your address. You must present yourselves in person at the police station. First, you have to get an appointment, which is not so easy, but this is the requirement to manage to get an appointment, and going personally to the police station and submit the application form. Simply they will require to take your original passport, to pay 12 euros tasa of 12 euros, a photo, and empadronamiento. Empadronamiento, as I am sure you know, is a registration certificate at the town hall. This is the only documents they will require for you to get or to change the new type of residence card. It will be granted automatically. It will be valid for 10 years. I am talking now about those who have the permanent green card. You will receive a new identity card for 10 years and will entitle you to work in Spain. Those British citizens holding a registration certificate as a temporary European Union resident, the temporary, not the permanent, the temporary, in this case, they must request the corresponding foreign citizen's identity card by applying in person at the police station. They must provide the application form, original passport, 12 euros again for the tasa, a photo, and again empadronamiento in the town hall. This identity card will be valid for 5 years. We are talking about those who have the temporary green card. It will be valid for 5 years and will allow you to work. And finally, British citizen not holding a registration certificate as an European Union resident, but residing in Spain in fact. I know there are many British who are living here a long time, but they didn't apply, they never applied for the green card, the residence permit, and you are living here in fact. In this case, you must apply for a temporary residence permit at the immigration office in Malaga. In this case, there will be 2 steps. First step in Malaga, second step in the police station. Marbella. In connection with the first step, which must be submitted at the Oficina de Extranjero, the immigration office in Malaga. It can be done in person or by representative or even online. In this case, it is not obligatory to go to Malaga to make the application in person. You will need to provide proof of your residence in Spain before the end of the transitional period. It is the key for you to take advantage of this possibility, to prove that you arrived in Spain just before the end of the transitional period. For that, I recommend to get the empadronamiento, to register yourself in the town hall, because it is a very good proof of being in Spain. Although also it can be a rental contract of a house, the movement of the bank in your account, some proofs simply showing that you were in Spain just before making the application. Here we have to distinguish 3 cases. If the applicant wishes to work for someone else as a salary employee, trabajador por cuenta ajena, it will be enough by presenting pre-contrato de trabajo and empadronamiento, as well as documents showing that the employer is duly registered in the tax Spanish system, Modelo 036, and registered in the Spanish Social Security system, Modelo 386. If the applicant wishes to work as self-employed worker, por cuenta propia, it will be necessary to get a NIE and present a document showing that he is registered in the tax Spanish system, Modelo 036, and registered in the system for self-employed workers of the Spanish Social Security, Modelo EAC. If the applicant wishes to apply for a non-lucrative residence permit, which means they have no intention of working, they must provide public or private medical insurance taken out in Spain or another country, as long as this insurance provides coverage in Spain that is equivalent to the coverage provided by the Spanish National Health System. In the case of pensioners, the S1 form certifying receipt of an UK pension entitles the holder to health care from the Spanish health system and will prove as well their financial resources. If the applicant is not a pensioner, he should present a bank certificate stating a balance of 5,000 euros per each person, 5,000 euros per each person as minimum, and the average balance in the last 6 months. In case you don't have any account in Spain, it will be also acceptable a bank movement statement from the UK regarding the last 6 months. In the 3 cases indicated above, worker as self-employed, as unemployed, or non-working resident, the immigration office must process applications within a maximum period of 3 months. And once the residence permit is approved, the applicant must apply for a foreign citizen's identity card in person, this must be in person, and provide fingerprints at the police station corresponding to their place of residence. The corresponding temporary residence permit will be valid for 5 years. In connection with British driving license, many people is asking me as well about this topic. I have to say that British driving license will no longer be valid in Spain and the rest of the European Union after the United Kingdom leaves the EU. However, before the end of this year, all British residents in Spain holding a registration certificate as an EU resident, temporary or permanent, can exchange their British driving license for a Spanish license without any difficulty. It will be terribly easy. Next year, however, British citizens will be treated the same as citizens of third countries. This means that they will not be able to exchange their driving license until Spain and the United Kingdom sign a bilateral driving license exchange agreement. In this regard, it should be noted that citizens of third countries can drive in Spain with their own country's driving license during the 6 months following the date of obtaining their residence permit, and during this time they must exchange their license for a Spanish license if there is a bilateral agreement with their country. If there is no agreement with their country, they will need to take a test to obtain a Spanish license. This means that any British citizen who does not apply to exchange their driving license before 31st December may be obliged to take a test in Spain to obtain a Spanish license, as there is currently no agreement between Spain and the United Kingdom regarding reciprocal recognition of driving license. So I advise you to apply for this change before the end of this year. In connection with the healthcare, and I finish with this point, during the transition period, Spain will continue to provide United Kingdom nationals with healthcare in Spain on the same terms and under the same conditions established prior to the withdrawal of the United Kingdom from the European Union, provided that the UK guarantees these same conditions to Spanish nationals entitled to receive health care in the United Kingdom, and also guarantee the reimbursement of expenses for health care provided in Spain to nationals of the United Kingdom. In short, workers, pensioners, tourists and students who are entitled to British health care will continue to receive this health care in Spain at least until 31st December 2020. It can be safely assumed that a bilateral agreement will be signed after the transitional period, and it is hoped that there will be a reciprocal agreement to leave this right unchanged for the benefit of all. And in principle, that's all. Now I give my word to Remy.
Go above the 150,000 inhabitants, we would be awarded much more resources, both from the regional government of Andalusia and from the national government. So, therefore, a lot more services would be available, consequently. So, more security, more healthcare, everything that's related to the population size of the city. The So I think that's an important aspect to take into account. And then once you are registered, empadronado, as they call it, you have to renew it. I myself, I'm a British citizen, and I didn't realize I had to renew mine recently, and I just did it a few days ago. So you do have to renew it in order to benefit from being registered, and also benefit the city that you live in or spend a lot of time. Now, regarding tax, it's a different kettle of fish. Tax, in order to be a resident for tax purposes, you need to meet three criteria, or one of the three criteria I'm going to explain. Number one, the basic one, is the stay, the criteria of permanence in Spain. And that's spending in Spain more than 183 days. And in that way of spending more than 183 days, you can't say, I spend 180 days, then I go away for a couple of days and I come back again, etc., because those absences are considered as part of the count for the 183 days. So you can't say, oh, I only stayed for 175 days, and then I went away for a few days, and then I came back again, then I went away again and came back. Those Guy McGrath for being so hospitable with the Town Hall of Marbella, and I also thank the Town Hall of Marbella for inviting us to talk to you about such an interesting subject as tax. Anyway, the criteria is the state criteria, 183 days, and as I explained, you have to be careful with the short absences because those do not count as being elsewhere. Then the family ties. So if you're married and you have children living in Spain, you can be considered or deemed to be a resident of Spain for tax purposes. Okay? So if you, and it does happen, some people have their spouse and their children living in Spain, but they have to live and work elsewhere. Well, it's important that in that other country you have proper evidence of your residence, such as paying taxes, being registered, etc., so that you can basically argue or have a valid argument against that deemed residence. And then the other aspect, which is perhaps less known by the general public, is the center of economic interest. If your center of economic interest is in Spain, you can be deemed to be a resident of Spain. So, it's, and that's what happens to, in a big way, Spanish businessmen or women that decide to live elsewhere. If they have the core of their business interest in Spain, then they are deemed to be resident in Spain. So they would have to make a special effort to show or prove that they're resident elsewhere. So if we remember the state criterion, more than 183 days, the center of economic interest, and the family ties. Once we establish whether we are a resident for tax purposes or not in Spain, then we can see what the consequences are. If you become a tax resident in Spain, as you know, you are taxed on your worldwide income and on your worldwide wealth. Okay? This second aspect, the worldwide wealth, is not a straightforward wealth tax on anything you own. It depends what you own, and it depends if you have debt. So it's on net wealth. And in any event, it's not a tax that is equal in every region of Spain. So, for example, in Madrid, in the autonomous region of Madrid, the wealth tax is bonified. I mean, it's basically you have an allowance of 99%, or 100%. I think it's 100%. So therefore, you don't pay any wealth tax. In Andalusia, it's still there, although the Andalusian government, which is quite recent, it's a conservative coalition, they have already cancelled inheritance and gift tax for direct family inheritance and gifts. And in their program, they also had doing something about wealth tax, whether it's to create a substantial allowance or whether it's to actually eliminate the impact of wealth tax. But if you become a resident of Spain, the rules that apply to you are the same that apply to any of us. Okay? As I say, I'm British myself, but I'm resident in Spain for more years than I can remember, and I've always been a taxpayer in Spain, just like anybody else. Okay? If you do not become a resident of Spain, then you remain a non-resident of Spain. And the question is, what changes for an individual that is a non-resident of Spain and owns property in Spain with respect to being in the European Union as opposed to Brexit? Well, in essence, what changes, or what you could say, the capital gains tax is the same. What changes is the income tax that you pay on, for example, rental income. So if you have a house and you rent it out, right now, as a member of the EU, you pay 19% tax on your net profit. In other words, deducting the costs that you need to incur to be able to rent the property. And if you become a third country, like the UK will become on the 1st of January, then you will start paying, you will have to pay 24% on gross rental income. This is what it used to be in the old days, so basically it's like a reintroduction. So there is a tax impact for non-residents if they rent their property, or even if they don't rent their property, because on the deemed income tax calculation, again, it's taxed at 24% and not 19%. Having said that, we need to remember that there is a double tax treaty between the UK and Spain. And I always use the example, I just used it talking to somebody just before I started to talk. Spain's ties with the UK have gone back for centuries. And here in Andalusia, you have a company, Osborne, the Black Bull, the spirits company, that was formed in 1772. So that's 4 years before the United States existed as a country. And that company, still a family-owned company today in 7th generation, was founded by an Englishman that came to Andalusia to set up what today is well known as sherry. So I think the ties have been there, and they'll carry on being there. There's always been huge interest between Britain and Spain, and I think British people feel very welcome in Spain, so I think that's still going to continue. But certain tax aspects will change, and again, as Ricardo explained with great detail, all the aspects of residence, if you come and go, how many months can you stay, etc. Well, of course, all that has to change. But from a tax point of view, I think the clearest impact is one I explained for people that own a property. Other impacts are more business oriented. We will lose the advantage of the parent subsidiary directive. So right now, a Spanish company paying a dividend to another EU company, parent company, there's no withholding tax. When the UK leaves the European Union, unless there is a deal that creates some sort of continuity in the taxation elements as they are today within the European Union, then that parent subsidiary directive will disappear, and we will have to go by what the double tax treaty states. That's applicable to interest, to royalties, etc. So, for example, dividends will pay from 0 to 15%. They will have a withholding tax in Spain, depending on the percentage owned in the company, etc. There won't be any withholding tax on interest and royalties, because the double tax treaty between Spain and the UK has that as 0. More stuff. There is one aspect of wealth tax that we need to, I want to point out, because traditionally when you think of how you calculate the wealth tax, you think of 3 values. You need to use the highest of 3. The acquisition value, a value reassessed by the tax authorities, or the cadastral value, which is like the rateable value. Well, the government in Spain at the moment has introduced in a project of law, which is potentially going to be enacted before the end of the year, they've introduced a 4th element, which is market value. And that is, well, I would call that a hidden increase in tax. Because if you happen to own a house and you've owned it for many, many years, and the historic cost of that house was low, but the market value today is quite high, it could have an impact on you because the value that you will need to use in your wealth tax is going to be increased. So if you're accountants or lawyers, prepare your wealth tax return for the year 2021 and you see an increase, don't think they've made a mistake. Ask the question, because probably it will have to do with this new provision that's coming in. Well, as I said before, inheritance tax and gift tax has basically been eliminated in Andalusia. But one of the problems of Brexit is that British citizens that are non-resident will be taxed on inheritance tax in accordance with the general regime in Spain, applicable to everybody. So you won't benefit from the regime in Andalusia. Okay? That is the law right now. Having said that, the jurisprudence, in other words, the courts are beginning to rule in favor of non-discriminating these people. So potentially, I think British people will still benefit from Andalusia's elimination of the wealth of the inheritance tax. But it's not in the law, so it would have to be potentially argued and fought in the tribunals against the tax code. I have my invaluable head of tax here, and I'm looking at her because I'm probably forgetting things, but I'm sure when questions and answers come, we can answer. The other aspect that's going to change, of course, is indirect taxation. So VAT, when you render services, for example, from Spain to someone in the UK, if that service is deemed to be realized in Spain, it will have to carry Spanish VAT. And the UK company will have to go through the mechanism of recovering VAT paid abroad, a bit like a US company would have to do today, which is an inconvenience, of course. And then, of course, the customs duties, which will also come into play. So, am I hopeful that there will be a deal? Yes. I mean, I'm hopeful because it's really going to make things a lot easier for a lot of people, in fact, hundreds of thousands of people, and a lot of businesses. And there's, as I say, huge business going on between the UK and Spain, and I think a deal makes sense for everybody. So we will see. And I think with that, I've more or less given you a summary, and I think it's probably better that we answer any questions you may have. Thank you very much.
It's a self-invested pension program. ISA is independent savings accounts, but they're tax exempt in Britain. But I know in Spain you have to pay income tax on the income in both of those programs.
That's correct. That's the case. It is the case, yeah. If you're a resident in Spain, of course.
When was when did they bring in the abolition of inheritance tax and wealth tax?
So can you bring it closer?
Sorry, when did they bring in the cancellation of inheritance tax and wealth tax in Andalusia?
The elimination took place. It's already in place at the moment.
Yes.
It came in.
Yeah.
We're now in. Now I think it came in beginning of
2018, I think.
2019, 2018. I think. I'll check it for you and let you know. But it's very recent. It's since the new government came in. ¿Cuándo entró el gobierno?
2018, I think. Junio, 2018. No, junio. De gobierno central.
No, de
No, el
Andalucía.
gobierno autonómico. O sea, ya año y medio.
Yeah, a year and a half ago. They approved it as soon as they came into government.
All right, the second half of the question is, if my mother died 2 years ago and she died before this was brought in, I assume that she's still liable for the inheritance tax
Yes.
when it comes through, but because she died before they brought this in, is that correct?
That's correct. The date for the taxation, the tax accrues on the date of the decease of the person.
Okay, and at the moment, if I wanted to give my son a transfer of money, I assume that there's no gift tax on that now. But there was before.
If you give your son,
If I give him
if you give your son
donation,
cash, but where does your son live?
well, he was living here, but he lives in Germany.
Well, you need to see. I mean, from your perspective, there's no issue, but that doesn't mean that he might not have an issue in Germany. You need to see the taxation, the taxation consequences in Germany. Sorry.
Sorry.
Can you hear me?
Yeah, okay, the consequences in Germany, but surely there must be similarity because it's the EU. I'm sure it's not identical.
No. The EU regulation applies to indirect tax, corporate tax in certain aspects, but not inheritance tax. Inheritance tax and gift tax is completely dependent on the individual jurisdiction.
So last question.
I mean, we could.
Yeah.
If you leave us your email, we're happy to check it for you.
What is
but
inheritance?
it's a German issue in reality.
Okay. What is inheritance tax in Andalusia today, percentage-wise, and gift tax?
The inheritance tax and gift tax goes on a sliding scale, which reaches up to 36%.
It hasn't really gone away.
No. It has gone away because if, for example, I live in Andalusia, I give to my children cash, and there's no tax. Zero.
Oh, okay.
But if I gift it to my cousin, there is tax. The elimination of inheritance tax is for parents to children, not to third members of the family or friends or whatever.
Thank you.
If you have a pension or income that you are taxed solely in the UK, what are the implications here? My income is taxed totally in the UK.
Sorry, but are you a resident of Spain or not?
About to be.
So if you become a resident of Spain, then all income you should report to the UK to HMRC, and they will ask you for a certificate from the Spanish tax authorities to show that you're registered for tax purposes in Spain, and then they should stop withholding in the UK.
So it's transferred?
So it should be transferred without any tax in the UK, and then you will pay tax in Spain.
Available appointments at the police before the end of December.
I think I'm going to leave that question to Ricardo.
Well, that's a good question. There is a lot of problem to get appointments, but I have to say that those British who has already got the green residence card so far, the old one, let's say, will have 6 more months in 2021 until the end of June. There will be a period, extension, a proroga for them to make the application. But those who has not got so far any kind of residence card, and no green paper, no green card, they must make the application or the appointment before the end of the year. In any case, I am sure that the authorities will have to accept by proving that you made or you try to make the application before the end of the year, they have to accept to extend this period. I am sure absolutely that the authorities will be flexible in this connection. Among other things, because the withdrawal agreement establishes that the authorities in the European Union and in Britain, they must be very flexible and helpful with all citizens, just not to harm citizens, British or European Union living in Britain. They don't want to harm them. So don't worry, because I am sure they will find some formula to avoid any problem. I am sure.
My question is regarding wealth tax. UK citizens resident in Spain now, they have pension pots in UK pension companies. Are they included in the wealth tax calculation?
the value of the pot, as you call it, is considered an asset that you would need to disclose.
Again. I have a question about driver's licenses. I applied for an exchange of my British driver's license August a year ago. I got papeles de conducir, which allow me to drive in Spain, but I can't drive out in Spain, and I had to hand in my driver's license, on top of which I still don't have a Spanish driver's license. That is now 15 months, and I was told at this meeting that it's easy to get one. It's not easy, and it causes a lot of complications. And I think a lot of people who have, the whole of Europe, everyone in Europe is going to have to do this. And I presume that Britain is the place that's holding this transfer up. But it makes life very difficult if you want to drive outside of Spain. Are there any comments on this?
Theoretically, it is easy in the sense that they will require very few documents, simply a passport, residence card, original driving license, and pay a small tax. The problem is, and I understand you and you are quite right, the problem is that in practice, however, they are making a bit complicated because of the appointments in the police station and the not police station, the Jefatura Provincial de Tráfico, the traffic headquarter in Malaga. They are working not very easily. There are a lot of delays and complications, but simply bureaucratic complications. Theoretically, any EC citizen who apply for the exchange of driving license, they will be required only a few documents. It must be submitted to the traffic headquarters in Malaga and waiting. It is true that you have to wait for a long time, too long time, and in the meantime, theoretically they should give you a provisional permission for you to drive. But in practice, sometimes they are not so efficient. In this sense, you are right.
I'd like to ask you, Bernard, what happens in Gibraltar with all these people that come to Spain to work, they go to Gibraltar to work? What will be the situation with them?
Well, before Spain agreed to sign off for Britain to Brexit, if you remember, the 28 countries in the European Union had to sign off, and Spain wanted to sort out the situation with Gibraltar. And as a result of that, they signed a treaty, which is the first treaty signed by Spain and Britain on Gibraltar, and it's a tax treaty that basically regulates those relationships. So I think people that work and live in either country are going to be protected by that treaty, by that agreement. But in addition to that, not only that, people that are resident in Gibraltar, really resident in Gibraltar, will be also protected. But people that are resident in Spain, pretending to be resident in Gibraltar, I think are going to have to revisit their situation, because the rules are very strict and actually, I would say, quite favorable to Spain. So in case of doubt of residence, the Spanish tax authorities will consider the person resident in Spain. So anyone that lives or spends most of their time on the coast under a high net worth individual tax agreement in Gibraltar, they need to revisit, because they can't remain in that system, because if they're ever challenged, they will be automatically considered a resident of Spain, and Gibraltar will accept it. The other aspect of that agreement is of huge transparency. The Spanish tax authorities are given access to the company registry, so to Company House in Gibraltar, but they're also given access to the register of ultimate beneficial owners. So anyone that has anything in Gibraltar needs to be aware that there's going to be full disclosure between Gib and Spain.
regarding driving back in and out of Gibraltar, with Spanish driving license into Gibraltar, vice versa?
I think, I think Gibraltar and Spain need to work together. I don't think it's going to be a problem to drive into Gibraltar. If you're driving with a Spanish driver's license, it's also I mean, I drive with a Spanish driver's license in Thailand or in the US. I don't think it's going to be a problem.
Anyway,
Thank you.
I would like to add
Yes,
something about that. I'd like to say that the withdrawal agreement establishes that in the future it will be approved a protocol, a specific protocol regarding the relationship between Gibraltar and the EU and Spain in consequence. So, to be frank, I don't think everything is so clear yet. We should wait to see what the protocol establishes, which will be approved shortly, hopefully.
Yeah, I just wanted to the gentleman that asked me about the pension pot. My head of taxes just pointed out that there are, depending, it's not so straightforward. The generality is that it's subject to tax, but there are some exemptions that could apply. So if you want to talk to this distinguished tax lawyer here when we're done, I'm sure she might give you a few hints.
Okay. As a non-resident, is it permissible to use an international driving permit gained in, say, the UK in Spain?
Yes, for a non-resident, no problem at all. You are allowed to drive.
Also, as a non-resident, allowed to come to Spain for 90 days in any 180 days, is it permissible to come many times within that 90 days?
Yes, there is no any limit of time in connection. The law states the following. The law states that you cannot be in Schengen, Spain or any other Schengen country, more than 90 days every 6 months. It can be continuously or fractionally. So it is not a problem at all, as long as you don't exceed 90 days every 6 months.
Is that a rolling time? Does it carry on from 1 year to the next? Or does it start in January and end in December and start again in January?
No, it will not be for a natural year. It will be from the date of entry.
If your contact, fill in the form that the personnel of the foreign department is giving to you now, because we can inform you about new events or talks. And I would like to inform you as well that the Foreign Department of the Town Hall is located in Marbella Congress Center, Palacio de Congresos, where we can assist you whenever you need it. And thank you to all for coming.